What's the most awkward thing that's happened at a sleepover? About 11 years ago, sleepover with girls and boys. All lights are out for about 10 minutes. We have all settled down and gotten silent for sleeping. Then we hear a grown male voice clearly enunciate the word "what?" Now, let me be clear. This was not a child's voice. This was like hearing James Earl Jones say "what?" There was about a 10-second silence, and then one of the girls says, "Who said that?" Silence. Then one of the boys starts laughing uncontrollably. We turn the lights on and he is laughing so hard that he's crying. Here we are all freaking out about some strange man in our room while we sleep, and he's pissing himself laughing. He finally calms down enough to tell us that it wasn't a person who asked "what?" He farted the word. His fart sounded exactly like the word "what?" We all cracked up. To this day everyone from that party still answers phone calls from each other with "what?" Was he able to ever replicate it, or was that the best moment of his life? I've been thinking of this enormous James Earl Jones fart and falling into giggle fits all day. When I was 6, I watched Jurassic Park at a friend's house one night. Got so scared I demanded my mom to come pick me up and take me home. So I said I was sick. My mother did not believe me. So I shit my pants in my friend's living room on accident so she would have to come get me. I didn't really go over to my friend's house that much after that. Fear can make a child crazy, especially fear of velociraptors. Damn. You purposefully shit your pants so your mom would come get you. You play to win, don't you? Does a Boy Scout trip count? Well, if it does, here it goes. I was in BS in an inner city area. The older kids were dicks. Well, my first weekend trip, my dad loaded me on goodies to share. I fell asleep and the older kids raided my bag and took just about everything. So it sucked, but whatever. I go home and tell my dad, and he was pissed but really composed, which was odd for my Irish longshoreman dad. So next month is my next trip, and my dad made a big batch of brownies but told me not to eat any or share with my friends. He told me leave them in my bag like I did last time. Sure enough, I woke up and they were gone, and 3 kids were shitting themselves like crazy. Yup, my pops laxed the brownies. He showed up that same morning to the campsite with another goodie bag for me to share. Never HQD my bag raided again. TLD, our older Boy Scouts robbed my treats, so my dad literally made them shit themselves. The great part about this story is that you and your father did literally nothing wrong. You didn't goad the guys into stealing the brownies. You just left them in your bag and they stole them because they're assholes. It's a sweet type of justice. I was out camping with a neighbor friend of mine when we were 14. I woke up hearing the shuffle of her sleeping bag. I asked her what she was doing, and without breaking a stride she said that she was warming herself up. Then I turned on the lamp and found her on top of her bag, naked and masturbating. She immediately stopped and pulled her sleeping bag up over herself, and she turned out the lamp. We sat there in silence for about 3 minutes. Then I said, "You can finish if you wanna." "No, you ruined it." We didn't speak much the rest of the trip. When I was 12, my friend Peter had a disco-themed birthday party. No, I don't know why, at his house. The party being on a Friday, we all stayed the night. Being preteen boys with limitless cola, we ended up staying up all night and decided to watch the sunrise on his back deck. As we're looking at the majestic, slowly lighting sky, our peaceful moment is shattered by a shrill, screaming voice. Looking to the source of the sound, we see his fat, topless, 50-plus-year-old neighbor lady yelling through her kitchen window that we're degenerate perverts. She was under the impression we were all staring at her. Once the yelling started, we couldn't really help it, and that horrible image will be forever burned into my mind. I'm 29 now. Even for pervy boys, IDKY, she would think anyone would want to stare at her. Considering her first reaction wasn't to cover up, she probably actually wanted them to see her, and berating them was just her cover. I was about 10, sleeping over with a group of pals, including my buddy's little brother who was around 6. We finished up a few rousing games of Donkey Kong 64 and Hydro Thunder and all went to bed. Woke up to find the little brother standing ominously above me, but ass naked except for a pair of Christmas-themed tube socks on his hands and arms, and peeing into my half-open sleeping bag. No more sleepovers at Ryan's house. Butt ass naked except for a pair of Christmas-themed tube socks on his hands and arms, and peeing into my half-open sleeping bag. Holy shit, this was the funniest visual that I've ever imagined. Not really a sleepover. I was 23 at the time and drove to California to stay on a buddy's couch. I drank a bunch of beer after the long drive and passed out. Woke up having pissed myself on his couch. It is about 5 a.m. I grab a towel and lay on it on the couch, resigning myself to being the guy who pissed on the couch for the duration of my stay. By some miracle the towel absorbed most of it. Him and his roommates woke up around 9 a.m., and nobody knew a thing. Edit, except his cat. His cat knew. My friend in high school had the house where all of our friends would play Smash Brothers tournaments until our eyes bled, then go to sleep in his massive RV parked outside. I wasn't, and still am not, a morning person, so I'd usually be the last one out of the RV. One night, I fall asleep on the pull-out bed in my jeans and all, with just a blanket covering me. As I wake up, I'm still in that half-awake, half-asleep haze, and I feel something rustling in my nether regions. I figure it's just morning wood, and go back to sleep. Then it happens. I feel it again, wake up for real this time, and my dick is outside of my zipper. Pants still on, blanket still covering, and as I look over, my friend is laying next to me, he and I being the only two in the RV, staring directly at the ceiling. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, and prayed he didn't just pull my penis out of my pants while I was asleep, so I packed up and headed home. Lo and behold, an hour later I get a text saying he was so sorry, he didn't know what he was thinking. Yeah man. You pulled my dick out of my pants while I was sleeping. I'm gonna need a little space. The LDR, my penis beauty rest was disturbed. Update, I've lost contact over the years after he went to a different college, but he's now in a happy relationship after he came out a year or two ago. The worst part of this story is until my girlfriend and I met, he was the only one, besides me, to have fondled my twig and berries. My friends were ruthless with those jokes. Ain't nothing gay about getting your dick socked. You missed out, my homie. This was both awkward and kind of scary. I was 8 or 9 years old. My friend was having a birthday party and a bunch of us were sleeping over in the basement. The basement itself was pretty creepy and we had spent much of the night telling horror stories until we eventually went to sleep. At around 2 a.m., we were woken up by one of the girls stomping up and down the stairs. She was yelling and crying. I can't remember what she was yelling specifically, but it was basically nonsense. It basically looked and sounded like she was possessed. A few of the girls started asking her to go back to sleep and she basically just angrily screamed no and continued going up and down the stairs. Finally, she eventually stopped, without a word, and walked back to bed. Found out in the morning that she had been sleepwalking, and on top of it had wet the bed. She was really embarrassed and we all felt really awkward at breakfast that morning. The LDR friend woke us all up acting like she was possessed by some kind of demon, turned out to be sleepwalking and peed the bed. Camping in the backyard with some friends when I had to pee super bad. I couldn't find the zipper to the tent to get out and I was about to burst. So I ended up trying to pee through the mesh window. I don't know why. Well, peeing through mesh doesn't work very well, especially with terrible 9-year-old aim, and I ended up laying a pretty thick layer of atomized urine all over everyone else in the tent. In the morning it turns out one of my other friends was awake pretending to be asleep and saw the whole thing and told everyone it was me who peed all over everything in the tent. Dude was awake while he was getting piss all over him and said nothing. What the fuck, man? Needless to say, I was not invited to another sleepover for quite a while. Dude was awake while he was getting piss all over him and said nothing. What the fuck, man? Holy shit, this sentence made me laugh so hard. I guess this is the reason he didn't say anything. Blogspot webpage. I just see a young boy staring ahead, completely still but wide-eyed and mortified. In my head the young boy knows exactly what he's doing, but he likes it. That's why OP is bewildered as to why he didn't say anything. When I was 4 I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't find the door to my room or the light switch. I decided that the mature thing to do at that point was to run around my room in a circle and scream until my dad opened my door. It worked. When I was about 7 or 8, me and a few friends were sleeping in a tent in my best friend neighbor's front yard. His dad was a bit of an alcoholic, quite similar to Randy Marsh actually. Anyways, his dad comes home from the bar, plastered, bursts into the tent and wakes us all up, saying we should all go up to the elementary school across the street. We go with him, the whole time acting like spies, avoiding all the lights, all under his drunk-ass directions. We get to the playground, and he decides he wants to challenge all of us to a foot race. So we all line up, he yells go, and we all take off. Surprisingly, he kept up with us almost all the way to the finish line, before he busted his ass, fell flat on his face, on concrete. He also landed awkwardly on his arm, breaking his wrist. Was awkward at the time, but looking back on it 20 years later, it's quite hilarious. Edit, woke up today to find I was given Reddit gold. Thank you, kind stranger. I like this story because it's a drunk dad that isn't doing some family ruining fucked up shit, just having a good time breaking wrists etc. I agree, it's refreshing to hear a drunk dad story that doesn't make me feel like eugenics should be used. At least he was goofy drunk and not make you all feel inadequate and maybe slave someone drunk. Mine are all things that I did. When I was in grade 1, I had a sleepover with my old best friend and her new best friend. I was jealous and felt left out the whole time. That night I wet the bed and we never hung out again. When I was younger, I used to puke if I ate eggs, even scrambled, and my friend's dad made eggs. I was trying to be polite and eat them but I couldn't keep them down and ran to the bathroom right off the dining room to throw up his nice breakfast. Third one, and the most mortifying, I was at a friend's house and got my period. I was wearing a thong and she didn't have any tampons, just huge pads. So I tried to make it work anyway. The next day we were sitting on the computer and there were only seats for 2 of us, so I sat on the one girl's lap. After a while I got up and realized I bled through my jeans and all over her leg. She laughed her ass off, thankfully, instead of being disgusted. Her mom had me sit on a towel when she drove me home. The camaraderie thing between girls when it comes to periods is awesome, bordering on weird. I remember in middle school there was this group of girls who really did their best to make me feel awful all the time, and yet when I bled through my knickers and everyone saw when we were in the changing rooms, they were lovely about it. Don't worry, it happens to us all. Have one of my pads, don't be upset. I thought they were going to be my friends then, but by the next day it was back to full-on meanness. Very confusing. I was sleeping over at my cousin's house. We stayed up and snuck out into the living room to watch Cinemax. It was after midnight and back in those days that was when all the titty flicks came on. One came on that my cousin was really into. He started touching his raging erection in his pajama pants and then he let out a blood-curdling scream. Somehow he ruptured a vein or something in his peen. We had to go wake up his mom. She looked at it and decided we had to go to the emergency room. Our whole family still makes fun of him for that until this day when we get together. My housemate just broke his dick a few weeks ago while having sex with his girlfriend. He ruptured things and apparently broke his urethra. I didn't ask too many details. We had to call an ambulance and there was blood all over his room. Shit was fucked up. He's still bedridden and wearing a catheter. I would not wish that on my worst enemies. I was 10 I think, and it was the first time I stayed over at this kid's house. Well, we go to sleep at like 2 or 3 a.m. and all seemed well. Then suddenly his drunk grandfather charges in the room and gets the poor kid in a headlock and drags him to the floor. Oh, and he was naked. I guess he suffered from PTSD or something. I kind of ignored the wild event while it was happening, and did not acknowledge it the next morning. I did not go back again. One time I was over at a friend's house for his 11th birthday. It was myself, the birthday boy, and 3 other guys. We all slept in our sleeping bags in the basement. At around 5 a.m., we all awake to find Jake yelling at the birthday boy Derek. The reason? Derek thought it was funny to take a piss on Jake's face while he was sleeping, and Jake freaked out. Jake walked out right after that, while the rest of us stayed up and called our parents around 7. I went home around 8, and in that time, Derek was still trying to play it off as funny. Derek lost 4 friends that night. Were some of your friends named Matt, Ben, Dayton? Edit, just so no one else feels left out, I was hoping for embarrassing stories about my brother, one of the names mentioned in Op's story. Sorry everyone. Nope, they were not. I should have mentioned those 2 names are not their real names. Why? Has something similar happened to you? 13 or 14 years old, all-night RPG session, pen and paper, with my buddies in my friend's basement. His awesome and very traditionally Chinese mom brings us course after course of food throughout the evening as I vainly try to GM an adventure where my friends are more interested in creating in-game simulations of being drunk. GURPS had a skill for that, like everything else, than in actually playing the game. The night wears on and we finally pass out with dawn quickly approaching. Shortly afterward I wake up with a start. My stomach didn't like the awesome Chinese food as much as the rest of me did. Jump up off the basement floor and bolt for the bathroom, only I'm really tall and have a problem with passing out when I get up too quickly. Black out in the doorway and fall hard. Wake up a moment later with my friends standing over me. That's when it hits me, that looming feeling of dread when you realize that you had just shit your pants in front of a room full of your peers. Is this real or am I dreaming? These terror-filled thoughts are interrupted by a renewed gurgling in my stomach. Apparently it is all for real. I claw my way into the bathroom and slam the door shut on my startled friends. I pull my pants down and unleash a foul kind of hell in the toilet even as shit continues to soak into my ill-fitting jeans. This happened in the 90s. But wait, there's more. Suddenly I need to vomit because this delicious food apparently cannot leave my body fast enough. I did the only rational thing that can be done and start puking into the garbage can as I continue to add to the mountain of poop underneath me. Apparently I had offended some vengeful deity that day because, obviously, the basket is wicker. So there I am, pooping everything that can be pooped as I vomit into a garbage can that is, at best, straining it. The floor is covered in vomit, my pants are full of shit, and that's the day that my social anxiety started. Welcome to the next decade of your life, kid. TLDR, rolled a critical fail on not shitting everywhere. Edit. Thanks for the double gold, Reddit. I'm glad that my most shameful moment could turn into one of my most prideful. Edit 2, triple gold now. Holy crap. I appreciate it, stranger, but let's spread this joy around to some of the other amazing stories in this thread. TLDR, rolled a critical fail on not shitting everywhere. One of the best lines in this thread. So, back in junior high, I had this friend, let's call him Steve. I was over at his house like I was every weekend, and we had another one of our buddies come over. This kid was unique in one particularly strange manner, and I swear to you I'm not making this shit up. The kid could literally inhale air into his anus and produce the most thunderous and extensive farts I have ever heard in my life, to this day. Well, one day we asked him to do it and to sit down next to Steve's dad on the couch and let one rip. However, the imbecile took this as hey go fart on Steve's dad's head and he proceeded to do so. I have never witnessed somebody turn from happy to utterly furious so fast in my life. I was absolutely speechless and Steve and I had to stand there and watch our friend get laid into by Steve's dad. Top 3 most awkward experiences of my life. When I was like 11 my mom made friends with this chick at her work who had a daughter the same age as me. There was a few times where her mom and my mom would hang out and bring us along so we were kind of friends. Anyways, the girl has a birthday party sleepover and invites me. We didn't go to school together so I didn't know any of the other girls she had over. There was 4 other girls. So we eat pizza, swim in her pool, sleep over stuff. So later in the night, after her mom and her mom's boyfriend had gone to bed, we are all hanging out in her room just talking about weird pre-teen shit while listening to music. So the TV is on, but since we have music on too, the TV is on mute. I don't know who put it on or how long it had been on, but in the middle of our conversation this girl says, "Oh my god, look at the TV." It was some softcore Cinemax porn and the room just went silent. So this other girl asks if any of us had ever come. Most of us are like, no. So then she asks if we know how. Again we were all like, no, not really. So this girl grabs a pillow and starts humping it while we all just sit there. Sean Paul's Temperature was playing in the background. The Giant Lemsky Lardy, Shanapple, Sumajavita, Toe Gerals, Edit, Holy Camel Tits. I wake up with 3,000 upvotes in gold. Thanks guys. This is like the moment when I found out how that Lion King song's lyrics looked. That song was the shit at middle school dances, everyone just kinda swaying and running around in big groups of people standing gossiping. I'm a female. When I was in grade 4, about 9 years old, I was having a sleepover at a girl's house who was the same age. The dog, a Jack Russell, wandered in and she said, "Want to see something cool? Watch this," and pulled down her skirt and underwear and spread her legs, letting the dog lick her out. I was stunned. I can't remember what my exact response was in the moment, but my mom picked me up about half an hour later. You don't remember the response because it was an incoherent screaming phone call to your mom to come pick you up. I was once at a sleepover and there were about 6 of us guys, about 12/13 at the time, watching porn. So me and my dirty little mind couldn't resist. I am there in my sleeping bag masturbating fast enough to power a small village with the energy, when all of a sudden my sleeping bag gets pulled off of me and my resplendent member is on show for all to see. Yet, that kinda sucked. Worth it though. 6 years later I finished the job inside his sister. I have a story of embarrassing sleepwalking while blackout drunk. When I was around 15. I was staying the night at one of my best friend's house. We decided to steal a bottle of whiskey from his parents' kitchen and walk down to the park down the street to drink it. It was around 10 p.m. I immediately started taking big chugs, dead sober and no tolerance. About 30 minutes later I was blackout drunk, but do remember small tidbits. We climbed the roof of the elementary school nearby, right next to the park, and tried to break into the classrooms. Eventually I became somewhat belligerent and my friend got annoyed. It took him about an hour to get me to leave with him. This is where my memory fades completely. We walked back to his house and, apparently, my friend told me to just lay down on the couch in his living room. At this point he was really fed up with how drunk I was and just wanted to go to sleep. He said I agreed and laid down on the couch as he went to his room. And this is where things get a little weird. I get up, in the middle of my sleep, and I walk into his older brother's room and just stared at him in his sleep. My friend had just changed rooms a week ago with his older brother, so I guess in my blackout stupor I assumed it was still his room. He wakes up and asks me what the hell I am doing. I say nothing and proceed to lay on the floor. His brother is weirded out, but decides to just leave me be and let me sleep on the floor, probably assuming I am drunk. About an hour later, according to him, he awakens to me rolling around and puking all over his floor. At this point I am entirely incoherent, so he decides to just deal with it in the morning and leave me be. About an hour or so after that, I get up, and walk into his parents' room across the hall, and start puking all over their floor. His parents are pissed, needless to say, but somewhat understanding. His mom gets up, cleans up the puke, I am completely blacked out, and takes me to the shower. She takes my clothes off, except for my underwear, and puts me in the shower and turns it on. This is all according to her. God knows what exactly happened and what I was saying. For all I know, my dick was popping out of my boxers. I never felt the need to ask. Anyways, the next morning I woke up in his basement with nothing but underwear on, that is stiff from dried puke, with virtually no memory after we decided to try and break into the school. I talked briefly about what had happened with him and his family, as I grabbed my clothes and left. Most embarrassing night of my life. Plot twist, he wasn't actually drunk, he just turned into a cat. Gold. For me. Why thank you. Hey, you get down from that roof right now. Nope, nope, meow, nope nope. Probably about 14, this girl decided to have a big slumber party for her birthday. Well, she was stereotypically uncool, wore t-shirts with wolves on them, bragged about how far she could stick the arm of her glasses up her nose, and kind of always smelled like dogs. I was about one social rung above her. My friend and I were the only people that showed up at her big party. Her mom made us hot dogs, and dinner was silent. Her dad arrived and started screaming about how her two gigantic German Shepherd hadn't gotten enough affection today. He ended up throwing a hot dog at the girl's mother. Later on I made a joke of the word gracias as gracias because I was 13. Her dad pulled me into the kitchen and screamed at me. I was shaken up and scared, so we all went to bed. In the middle of the night my friend and I woke up with the girl sitting up right between us and shaking us awake. We tried to figure out what was going on and she just said, you know, we could kiss. Having no interest in such things at that age, I was thoroughly disturbed. My friend called her mom and claimed we were sick and had to be picked up immediately. It was just too much discomfort for one night. That's some David Lynch level discomfort. I would love to see that whole experience on a Super 8 camera. Yikes. What happened to her, if you know? Sounds like a rough childhood. I mean, I ran into her years later at the community college. She had this large, goth boyfriend, and I heard rumor of her fucking him in the library. She'd become really loud and awkward in that insecure way. I never heard what happened after that. Reading your post made me sad. How a person develops into an adult can be so influenced and fucked up by their parents. Not that I'm assuming this girl was an example of it, but sounds like it. I think that your parents and just your life in general has a large influence on who you become. I was an only child and it was just me and my mom growing up. She went to school and worked 2 jobs to support us. I was alone a lot. Whenever I wasn't at school I was alone, too poor for daycare. I just got used to being alone, and I kind of prefer it that way now. I have a lot of social anxiety and I just don't understand people very well lol. But now I have to talk to people all day during work and it's just awkward the whole time. I would like to think that if as a child I was around people more often or made more of an effort or whatever, I would be better in social situations now. I was in 7th grade, staying at my friend's house for the night with one other guy. It comes up late in the night that this guy has never masturbated. The host friend, who was infamously fucked in the head, this guy stole his sister's underwear to jacket into them, gets details on what the other guest likes. Turns out, he likes the incest thing too. So the generous host gives him a pair of his sister's panties so the guest can pretend they are his own sisters. The host then goes on to tell an erotic tale to the guest, moisies and all, while the friend jacks it into the panties and comes for the first time. Meanwhile, I'm just on the couch trying to get some goddamn sleep while these psychos reminisce about their sisters' vaginas. No one ever mentioned it since, and I stopped hanging out with them shortly after. One time I was sleeping over at my friend's house. I was about 12, and the night started off terribly because her brother farted in her room and it smelled so bad I was nauseated. Her parents were gone all the time, so we were unsupervised. My friend suggested we go through her parents' closet. We did, and we found the most disgusting pornographic pictures of her fucking parents, spreading their assholes, covered in honey, shaving their pubes, etc. My friend obviously knew the pictures were there beforehand and took great joy in seeing my disgust. Then she pretended to overdose on herbal supplements and I started crying and I went home. I think we were all around 15, about 6 male friends came over for your typical high school sleepover, pizza, soda, and video games until 3 in the morning, and everyone just passes out where they lie. Except something must have been in the air that night because almost everyone was getting sexual. It started with jokes about sword fights in the bathroom, then a couple of them actually went into the bathroom to piss and cross the streams. Or so they say, I didn't verify. Then at one point, 5 of them, 6th was passed out, basically started comparing dick sizes, and I backed out. I had my reasons. I was closeted bisexual and in denial, and the last thing I wanted was to be ostracized in a class that was only 20 students. So yeah, kind of odd that the inadvertently gayest experience of my life happened in my bedroom and I backed out. I have 3 short stories that are actually quite funny. First one, be like 12 and have a friend over that is a few years younger, little brother of my sister's best friend. In the middle of the night I wake up to crying. Turn on the lights. The friend has somehow gotten stuck in his sleeping bag and was upside down in it. I was crying with laughter while getting my parents to help out. Second one, I'm 21 at a party, everyone drinking, having a good time, and we sleep in his yard in different tents. One tent had 3 persons lying in it and it was a small 1-person tent. 2 girls and a guy were sleeping there. At a moment the guy wakes up because he gets poked in the back. Turns out one of the girls was furiously masturbating, by the lack of room caused her to poke him in the back with her elbow. He got annoyed and asked if she needed help or would finish fast. She didn't, got disturbed and said she was almost done. And last but not least, this happened to a friend of mine. First time he was sleeping over at his girlfriend's house. They went clubbing and went home. In the middle of the night he started sleepwalking and walked right into her parents' bedroom and climbed into bed with them. Best part, they noticed him getting in bed with them but they didn't care and let him sleep. The next morning he awoke in between his in-laws. It's a few years later now and he and the girl are happily married with 2 kids. The wedding toast was just hilarious. A lot of these stories are from when people were 10-15. I had a friend about 2-3 years ago, when we were both about 23-24, who was a night owl and I worked the 3rd shift, so we'd hang out pretty regularly late at night. Drink, smoke, shoot the shit while I'd play Xbox. She had some troubles but was generally a sweet girl. One night she shows up, fucked up out of her mind, and I put her to sleep in my bed and just played some video games until about 5-6 a.m. She shoots up in bed, looking like a zombie, and says she has to pee but couldn't do it on her own. So, I walk her into the bathroom, set her up on the toilet and walk out back into my room. I hear the toilet flush and the door close, so I assumed she was okay. Then about a minute goes by and she doesn't come back into my room when all of a sudden my mom walks in and says, half asleep, I think one of your friends just tried to spoon me. This may not fit the theme exactly since I was a little older when this happened, but here is my sleepover story. So I was 17 and it was my first week of college. I had met a guy at the DDR machine and we hit it off pretty well. He invited me over to his apartment one day to meet his roommate's cat. I took the bait and went over. We ended up watching movies, playing with the cat, and hung out until 4 a.m. Around that time he told me that I should probably head back to my dorm. I insisted that he either walk me back or let me crash on the couch until morning. I was new to the campus and had no idea how to find my way back to my dorm that night. He said I could sleep in his room, so I got a pillow and got on his floor and tried to sleep. The lights went off and after a few minutes he climbed out of his bed and joined me on the floor. A few minutes later he insisted that I just sleep in his bed because it was much more comfortable. I was tired and that night had gone well enough, might as well cuddle, right? Well, I was just lying there next to him in bed and I noticed some slight vibrations. I didn't pay any mind to it because I figured it was nothing. Soon after I felt something hit the side of my face. The guy apparently was masturbating without me noticing and jizzed on my face and my hair. I didn't know how to react, so I just started awkwardly laughing and made him clean my face hair. TLDR got invited over to meet a cat, got jizz in my hair. When I was about 11 my new next door neighbors moved in and the youngest son around my age invited me to a sleepover. He was a nice enough fella if I recall, but when we went into his room and he was showing me around, he goes, "1 sec, I forgot something." Well, when you have to piss like a motherfucker, that 1 sec feels like an eternity. I considered finding the nearest bathroom but was worried I'd get lost or be intruding. I know, no logic there, but I was 12 and they were the first Jewish family I'd ever met, so everything was a bit odd. Anyway, sure enough, I pissed myself real good, and before Ben could make it back to his room, I bolted to the door to walk back home. Of course, I'm not trying to hang out with this guy with piss all over myself. On my way out, the mom asks me why I'm leaving, and my response, which I thought at the time was a pretty good one on the spot, and looking back certainly is not, I said, you know, sometimes you just need to go home. I walked next door to my house, tossed the urine-covered shorts in the laundry basket, and went upstairs doing whatever the fuck I did when I was 12 for the remainder of the evening. At dinner, my parents confronted me in an odd manner, acting as if they caught me doing something, and my mom asked, so you were wearing your red shorts this morning? You changed since then? Is there anything you want to tell us? In the first lie I can ever remember in my life, I promptly responded, well, I was playing with my Hot Wheels, and was moving all over the house putting them in my pocket to carry them, and I decided these pair of shorts have bigger pockets, so I put them on to carry more Hot Wheels. They called me out on that shit right away, but I'm pretty sure I played with hella Hot Wheels that night anyway. Dr. Hot Wheels are the shit. That's one of those excuses that is just so outrageous and absurdity specific that it sounds like it must be true for some reason. I said, you know, sometimes you just need to go home. I fucking died. When I was around 8 years old, I was close friends with these 3 siblings, 1 boy and 2 girls. The boy was 8, 1 girl was 10, and 1 was 6. One night they all decided to sleep over at my house, and I was excited. I had a huge crush on the 10-year-old girl, but she talked back to her mom and wasn't allowed to stay over in the end. Oh well, I was still excited to play some video games with the brother and sister, so we have a pretty good time playing Gamma Cube, and eventually we are all going to sleep. A few hours later I am awoken by a bright light coming from the kitchen. I walk over to the kitchen to see what is going on, and the 6-year-old girl is standing in front of my fridge, half asleep, pissing all over everything. I was a very sheltered child and easily grossed out, so I freaked the fuck out and ran to get my mom. I couldn't eat stuff that was in the fridge 4 weeks after that. TLDR, my food tasted like piss. It was first grade, my first sleepover party. We were watching one of the Star Wars movies and talking Pokemon cards. We were all having a great time. Bedtime rolls around and my dad has to bend over to turn the VCR off. As he crouches down, he lets rip a fart so thunderous Thor would have cowered right into the face of my best friend at the time. Edit, man, I go to sleep and wake up to a ton of little orange envelopes. Because some of you have asked, no, that is not what ended my friendship with the kid. Though his dad and my dad are really good friends now, so I can't help but wonder if they bonded over that. Your dad should have looked him in the eye and asked him how it smelled. I was 13 at the time. The sleepover was uneventful. TV, PS2, tons of food. Then I fell asleep only to wake up in the middle of the night to see 2 of my male friends hooking up. Once I realized what was going on, I ignored it and went back to sleep. I had no idea that they were gay, although now they both have girlfriends, so who knows. I give them props for having the balls to go at it right in front of us while the rest of us slept. To this day they have no idea that I saw it. My turn to shine. I've always done weird things in my sleep. I still do, but thankfully not as often. I scream, I get up and take a shower, I go in the kitchen and make a sandwich, but when I was younger, elementary age, I used to strip while I was sleeping. I would wake up and my Scooby-Doo nightgown would be underneath my pillow. It was weird. So one night, me and some 10 other girls were spending the night at my friend's house because it was her birthday. We were having fun, eating cake, watching movies, blah blah blah. We all fell asleep while watching some movie. In the morning when we all wake up, I'm still half asleep and I get out of my sleeping bag and stand up and stretch in front of everyone. But naked. Some 10-15 years later and my friends have still not let that one go. Back when I was big into getting high, My friend wants to hang out, which meant smoking pot, so I agree. It's important to note that for whatever reason, this friend always got a boner from smoking. Weird. So we're at his house, high as fuck, and we decide to watch a movie. It's also important to note that we are on two separate couches. About 20 minutes into the movie, I noticed the guy rubbing his crotch over his pants. Seriously, weird. He gets up and goes to the bathroom, so I assume he's just going to wank it out in private and that'll be that. To my surprise, he decides the more appropriate action to take is to get stark naked and run like a madman towards his couch, and then proceed to fuck the couch. I saw this all out of the corner of my eye and I tried to just watch the movie, but the shit was too whack. I burst out in awkward laughter, like a mix of what the fuck, man, style of disbelief and a little bit of sadness and terror. I don't let him live this down. Have you ever been so high that you fucked a couch in front of your friend? 10. I'm just wondering how exactly you don't let him live it down. Like, do you pass furniture stores and ask him to rate the couches? I was 11, staying the night at a friend's house. They had this really annoying yappy Chihuahua mix. His mom was dating this guy with these two mean-ass Rottweilers. He had just moved in and his dogs were kept fenced away in the corner of the yard. We were not allowed to let the little dog into the backyard with the Rottweilers, because the fence to their little area wasn't very good. His mom and boyfriend left for the day. We were playing around in the backyard, pretending to be FF7 characters or some shit, and went inside to play PlayStation. Later that day, we heard screams upstairs. We came running to the top deck that looked over the backyard. The Rottweilers were covered in blood, and the small dog's innards were scattered all throughout the fenced-in area. The Rottweilers had ripped the dog to shreds. He must have squeezed under the fence trying to be all alpha. The boyfriend went down to the yard swearing up a storm. He pulled the dogs up to opposite fence posts by their choke collars, tied them there so they couldn't move, and bashed their heads in with a splitting maul laying in the yard. We were screaming the whole time. His mom was screaming, but she was a useless drunk and didn't do anything. My friend and I went into his room and didn't say a thing to each other. Half an hour later his mom said I needed to call my mom and have her take me home. While I was waiting by the window for my mom's van, her boyfriend said I left the gate open and it was my fault. I started crying. I didn't tell my parents what happened because I was so scared of this guy, so that was pretty awkward. I spent the night at my buddy's house one night back in high school along with his girlfriend at the time. It started out normal, video games, food, watching Daria. Then into the night they grew aroused for whatever reason, so they start to fuck on the bedroom floor. My buddy then reaches his hand up to my goodies and starts shoving his hand in my shorts saying, "See here, let me suck your dick while I fuck her." It was awkward as shit, so I just sat there frozen while he massaged my penis and continued to pound his woman. After a few terrifying minutes I pulled away and pretended to busy myself on his computer, while he continued to fuck her on the floor. She sounded like a squealing guinea pig. I didn't know what to do. In high school, a few friends and I were spending the night at a friend's house and his parents were out for the night, so of course we got in their alcohol cabinet. A few shots of whiskey later, a rather well-endowed friend started diddling himself in front of everyone and proceeded to try and go down on himself. To top it off, another friend who was a bit below average in the length department started diddling himself, again in front of everyone, screaming, "I'm not small, I'm average." It was a good night. TLDR, two friends wonked in front of me. My mom had this close friend who had a kid almost exactly my age, 3 weeks younger. When things weren't good with my dad, Mom would take my brother and I to their place for a sleepover. We kids all slept in the same room, and once my brother was asleep, he'd molest me. I somewhat enjoyed it, and that made me feel awkward and embarrassed. It still does. Both of us had been interfered with separately by adults, so I suppose I equated it with affection. This happened when I was 8. Despite enjoying what he did, I still hated going there. Part of me knew that it wasn't right. Plus she made stew every fucking night. I hated it. It took me years not to associate stew with awful things. Well, that wasn't very light-hearted. Sorry guys. Internet hugs man. I can't sleep alone anymore cause of my cousin sneaking into my room every time he had a sleepover with my big brother. I am 17 now. I had a next door neighbor who did the same thing to me for years. Just admitted it to someone for the first time ever about 6 months ago. Then she broke up with me soon thereafter. It's weird how you can feel guilty for something that wasn't your fault, all because your body is programmed to somewhat enjoy it every time it happens. Makes you feel like a really fucked up person when you aren't. Well, not really a sleepover. I mean, I was like 25. Anyway, my wife and I had gone on a snow-showing trip to somewhere around Yosemite with a couple of her co-workers, a dude and a chick who were not together. We stayed at a hostel one night, and the room we got had a full-size bed and 2 bunk beds. One would think, given we were the couple and they were the single people, we'd get the bed. But it came up that we were all in the same room and tired from snow-showing and wouldn't be doing anything but sleeping, so who cares? So I took the top bunk, the least desirable bed in the room, my wife the bottom bunk, and the other 2 shared the full bed. This room was small, as you would expect in a hostel, with a shared bathroom for like 5 other similar rooms. So cramped, my wife could have easily reached out, touched the other people's feet from her bunk without stretching. So I wake up in the middle of the night, because I'm not comfortable, but before I can roll over I hear the sound of a very jolly bulldog trying to get the last of the mayonnaise out of a very drooly slick jar. It's the only way I can describe it. As my ears tune in more, I hear soft moans of passion and whispers of delight. Now, rumor has it the dude with us was hung like a female teacher in a Japanese cartoon, which is to say, a cock like a Pringles can with an apple on top. And it sounded like he was jamming it into a 5-gallon bucket of pudding. At first I'm frozen, like, I can't move, this is so weird, but then I was like, man, fuck that. So I rolled over, and they stopped. OMG, do you think they can hear us? The stupid chick with the cabinous pussy says. The dude mumbles something incoherent in reply. I roll over again, and I hear my wife roll over too. It's quiet for a bit, and then, a slow slurp, and a low moan, followed by another, and then another and they're at it again. I guess he somehow managed to finally come, even though he was fucking what sounded like a plastic grocery bag bulging with fish guts, because the frequency headed, swirled, and finally died after one final slurp, accompanied by a barely stifled HNNGHHH. The next morning everyone was sleeping at a chaste distance. I was up first, and went to the bathroom. You know how you don't notice a smell in a room until after you've left and come back? Yep, it was bad. I felt immediately saturated with this stinkin' like Agent Smith. I can't but feel as though I was somehow infected by it. So I guess not really sleepover, not really awkward so much as horrible, but who gives a fuck, no one's gonna read this anyway. When I was 16, I stayed over at my friend's house. We had been out to the cinema and had come back and were watching another film at his house. His elder sister, who was about 21 at the time, came rolling in at about 1 a.m. and stood in the doorway to say goodnight to us. Now, I had a massive crush on his sister, and, as this was in South Africa, we were lying on these fold-out camp bed things in only a pair of shorts each. As it was a hot night, being 16 and able to, I got a near instantaneous erection at the sight of his sister, my dream woman. So as she had walked off and we were in a room lit only by the TV, I pulled my shorts down to reveal my raging manhood and uttered the now immortal line, "Jesus, Mike, this is what your sister does to me." His sister had come back into the room we were in through a door behind us and, as my goods were on display, leant over and tapped me on the head and said, "Thanks Mart, but could you turn the volume down a little bit?" To this day, I have never heard laughter so loud and uncontrollable as that which was coming from my best friend. I'm gonna go with the first hand job I ever got. It was at a church retreat and we were both in separate sleeping bags. The initial tug job itself wasn't entirely awful, despite being mildly chaffing, but she didn't notice when I had finished. So for approximately 20 seconds, this girl who had been nice enough to christen my penis with its first contact with another consenting female, mashed my dick into limpness with unrelenting adolescent fury. I eventually asked her timidly to stop, and murmured that I was done. The next day word obviously spread like hell, which is expected of teenagers. However, it would be noted that my mom was one of the facilitators of the retreat, and I spent the next 2 days in constant fear of her finding out. Combine that with bashful glancing eye contact during breakfast, and similarly uncomfortable encounters during various leadership and spirituality exercises, and it made for quite an awkward experience. That, and forgetting a change of clothes and spending Saturday and Sunday in my cum-encrusted boxer briefs was a real nifty constant reminder. TL. Dr. First HJ at a church retreat plus teenage shame equals a story for my friends at home to laugh at me about. Sick. I came out of the closet during a sleepover, was sharing a waterbed with 2 other dudes and 3 more were sleeping on the floor. I just came right out with it and they all just kind of reacted with and talked about something else. I thought they just accepted it right there and it wasn't a problem. It was a huge relief for me that they brushed it off without any issues, too. Ended up finding out last year, I was 13 when this happened, 20 now, that it was super awkward for everyone else and that's why they changed the subject so fast. It wasn't at all awkward for me, but for them it was. Sorry guys, see. Although the guy in the middle of me and another friend whispered in my ear that he was being we stealth cuddled for a bit, so, doesn't matter, had cuddles, I guess. Was sharing a waterbed, we stealth cuddled. No, you did not. In the 5th grade I spent the night at my now lifelong friend's house for the first time. They had just had their carpets replaced earlier that day or week. On the way into the house his mom said, "Boys, take your shoes off when you get inside." I was like, fuck that. We got a video game to play and ran upstairs. We were hanging out playing Turok 2 for like an hour when we got thirsty. I went downstairs with my buddy to get some Gatorade. On our way to the kitchen we saw this amorphous lump sitting in the living room. Upon further inspection, it was a huge pile of dog shit. Upon further inspection, it had been tracked in on my shoe, and went all the way from the kitchen through the living room, up the stairs, and into the bonus room. Fuck. So we grab some red Gatorade, and keep playing Turok. Meanwhile, his mom, who is as southern and mild-mannered as they come, is on her hands and knees on the stairs cleaning dog shit off her new carpet. In retrospect, I don't know why I wasn't cleaning. About 20 minutes later I got excited during our video game adventure and spilled half of my red Gatorade onto the, seemingly, only area of the carpet not tainted with dog shit. After we finished playing Turok I decided I would only drink water for the rest of the night. I was slightly mortified at all the destruction I had caused. We started fucking around on the treadmill in his bonus room. Despite my poor beverage handling abilities, I decided to drink some water while fucking around on the treadmill. I fell off and spilled my water all over their answering machine and fried it. After that I clogged the fucking toilet which overflowed at 3 in the morning. My friend had to go wake up his mom and tell her. The next morning, these patient souls had somehow not murdered me, or kicked me out of their home. So I ended up breaking a few more items. My buddy and I started horsing around on his old antique bed. I jumped off a chair and onto the bed and cracked the bed frame. Fuck. My buddy then showed me the sand dollar his grandfather brought back from Florida for him. I crushed it in my hand. DR broke what seemed like every fucking thing in my friend's house the first time I went over. Didn't go over again until high school. Casualty list: dog shit tracked all over new carpet, red Gatorade spilled on new carpet, broken answering machine, clogged and overflowing with shit toilet at 3 a.m., broken antique bed frame, broken sand dollar, destroyed my welcome in that house. Edit. Hey, I'm glad so many of you enjoyed my story. To whoever asked why my friend trusted me with that sand dollar, I have no idea. It was as if as soon as I held it, I knew I would destroy it. And I did. I realized what a little bastard I was that night. Although none of it was intentional. I still break shit sometimes, but now it's mostly my girlfriend's stuff. Luckily she is very patient and forgiving. Thanks to someone out there for the gold. I was actually thinking about this yesterday and wondered what happened to the kid and how he is now. This was 1993 or 1994, I was going to a Catholic school, and I was about 9 or 10. It was my friend's birthday and he invited all of the boys, 15 of us, in our class to a sleepover. That's what most of us did for our birthdays, but he invited every boy instead of just a few of his really good friends. There was this one kid, Ryan, that none of us really liked. He was way too touchy with us and always followed John around. He made us uncomfortable. We were all children, mind you, and this was the early mid-90s. Well, anyway, cut to the morning. Ryan was the first one to wake up, and I don't remember who woke up second, but whoever it was started yelling that Ryan was leaning over John while he was still asleep and was about to kiss him. Sure enough, when we were woken, Ryan sprung up and ran outside. John's parents told all of everyone else's parents, and we all told everyone else at school what happened. Ryan never came back to school. I feel bad for him. I can't imagine what it must have been like for him and his family to deal with something like that. I wish we had handled it better and that we had been more accepting. I even knew gay people back then. I feel ashamed of myself for telling other people that Ryan tried to kiss John while he was sleeping. I really hope he's happy and comfortable with who he is. I can't explain how bad I feel about having any part in that situation. I wish I knew then what I know now. Too late to entertain anyone with this post, which will surely be buried, but here goes. I was on a camping trip in the far north, Arctic, and there was a night where about 6 people managed to get a decent night of sleep in a room of a local's home. We all shared the room and everyone fell sound asleep because they were exhausted from days of hiking. Except me, that is, because I don't sleep often and was wound up with the storm. Outside in the middle of the night, as I'm laying there looking out the window, I hear a really weird sound, like this rubbing of silk. It gets more and more intense, and for a moment I'm having this horror story moment where there just has to be some weirdness coming to get us all. The sound turns into a slight thumping and gets more and more intense. I look around and to my shock, see what is going on. One of the shyest girls I have ever met, I mean, I'm talking an extreme level of shyness, is face down, ass up, finger fucking the ever-loving shit out of herself. As far as I could tell, she was out cold and having some wonky sex dream. It was really awkward. I didn't want to watch, so I didn't, but it was a small room, close quarters, and there was no escaping the sound of sklock thump, sklock thump, sklock thump, sklock, 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 sklock. She finally awoke with a start, and out of the corner of my eye I saw her look around the room, probably realizing what happened and praying to Holy Baby Jesus that nobody saw. It was weird, really weird to see someone like that in an unconscious state. I could never look at her as the diminutive shy girl again. I'm a guy who for some reason is mainly attracted to quiet, shy girls. Let me tell you, the shy girls are actually always the horniest. Disclaimer, weirdos socially awkward still won't have much luck pulling shy girls. They aren't easy slutty, they are just really dirty once you get close to them. Not a great school story, but 2 summers ago when I was 19, I was kind of into a girl, so I went over to her apartment. We drank for a while, then things get hazy. My memories in order that night, boobs, being on floor asking for permission to get back in bed, her throwing up in the dark and going to the kitchen to grab cups for her to throw up in. I wake up the next morning in a moist state to her having wet the bed. Skip forward a few weeks. Same shit, drinking and smoking. She goes to her room, and her roommate recommends follow her. Being a bit stoned, it takes me a few to mentally prepare. By the time I get in her room, she's already fallen asleep with sensual NSYNC on, snoring. I kinda poked at her in a quasi-attempt to wake her. Unsuccessful, I go to sleep. Wake up the next morning and she's pissed the damn bed again. TLDR, spend the night with attractive girl on 2 separate occasions. Wake up in her pool of piss both times. Me and 2 friends had a sleepover at another friend's house when we were maybe 12, 13, and we were trying to figure out things to do after we played Dungeons and Dragons. Friend of mine decided to create a game where it would test our real-life thief abilities by turning off all the lights in the house and sneaking around the house in the pitch black. The object of the game was to throw a tennis ball at the person, and you only had 3 tennis balls. We had 1 minute to find a place to start hide, so I snuck upstairs really quietly into the computer room. A few moments later I hear one of my friends come into the room, but he didn't see me. Then my other friend came in the room. I eventually said something and we just decided to turn on my friend's computer and play some Diablo 2. So my other friend is downstairs crawling, sneaking around, and we hear him throwing tennis balls and them bouncing off the walls. It was pretty awkward to know that he was down there in the pitch black throwing tennis balls and things he thought were us, but it was even more awkward because we knew he was cheating by throwing more than the 3 balls he was allowed to throw. We let this go on until he broke a lamp and we heard oh shit. We see the downstairs light turn on, then he walks upstairs and opens the door to the computer room and sees us playing Diablo 2 on his computer. You dickheads, I broke my mom's lamp. I was at a party sleepover with my swimming team when I was about 18. We all had a great time, and everybody had agreed to stay the night there, since it was pretty far away from everybody and we were all piss drunk. So it was decided that we would all sleep in the basement where we had the party. Then about half an hour after everybody has gone to bed, I start hearing this noise. The unmistakable noise of a person getting a blowjob in the other end of the room. And in that end, there were only 2 people, so it was kind of obvious who it was. And as stated, I was piss drunk, so I just thought, God damn it, man. Now I gotta listen to this shit. I'll just try to fall asleep, I guess. But they went at it for a long time, and when the guy at one point started moaning, I let out an annoyed sigh, found my headset and started listening to some loud music. Next morning I found out that everybody else had also heard them, so we were all kinda annoyed. Oh, and did I mention that the girl actually had a boyfriend? And that was the last sleepover with the swimming team. Edit, a word. Who? I actually have an answer for this one. So, high school graduation, friends come over, party blah blah blah, we get drunk. Wake up in the morning after some sleeping, I am in my bed. Good news. Bad news. One friend, male, with a boner poking me in the lower back, cuddling big spoon. I'm cuddling little spooning another friend, male, but no boner on my end, thankfully. Third friend, male, curled up by our feet, snoring like a damn chainsaw. Now it gets even more weird. 2 friends, male, sleeping on the floor close to each other, but not spooning, dressed like women. We are talking wigs, make-up, etc. One had a single balloon in his shirt to be a fake breast. Again, no words. We all woke up pretty much separately, and not a single goddamn word was said. I have no recollection how that situation came to be, and if anyone had any idea, they never came forward. I am not sure I want to know what the hell was going on anyway. In high school my best friend was considered the rich friend. His parents always had alcohol and always let us sleep at his house. One night he brings out a bottle of vodka and beers. We go to town on the booze. We were watching a boxing match and having a good time. Out of nowhere I vomit all over his carpet. I didn't feel sick. I even laughed. But this wasn't vomit. It was blood. Now there is blood, vomit all over his leather recliner and carpet. I laugh and he's upstairs to grab a beer and piss. I'm in the bathroom with my beer as soon as I walk out his mom sees me. Sati the Lord, what's in your hand? Nothing mhphm, as I very drunkenly set down the beer trying to hide it. She shakes her head and walks away. Fast forward to 6 a.m. His dad walks down, it reeks of pot, booze, and bongs are laid about. Then he sees me with the blood on the recliner and carpet. He bitched out my friend as heads upstairs. He comes back down with cleaner and a few paper towels and hands them to me with a disappointing look. I cleaned up my blood vomit and his mom made us breakfast. To this day there is still a red stain on his carpet. Probably the time I was on the couch between 2 couple that were making out. I hate my friends. Or the time that my friend was getting a drunk, sloppy, and noisy blowjob 3 feet away from me on New Year's when they believed I was asleep. Or the time that I sat through the entirety of Avatar while my buddy pretended to not be finger banging this same girl a year or so prior. Or that one time I got a wet willy at Pussy Juices from that same friend after he finger banged a girl at another sleepover. Or maybe even that one time that my friend got a hand job prom night under my blanket the same night my whore girlfriend dumped me for some criminal. Finally, there was that one time that I passionately fucked my friend's ex on another friend's bed and having one of them walk in on my hairy ass going to town. I even got to third base earlier that night on the floor next to the bed because one of the above friends was in it, but not for long.